Let's have a conversation about why some people are gay. Hi, my name is Dr. Natalie Jones. I'm a licensed therapist. And I wanted to make a video based off of a question I was asked, but this is something that's based off of, my opinion, my education, and my training. This commenter says, can you make a video about why people choose to be gay / lesbian, clinically and scientifically, the root cause, and so on? So I think again, this is a chicken or the egg situation. So I think there are a lot of people that, are born, with, having their sexual orientation. So they're born being gay or they're born being heterosexual. So I do think that that's nature's part in everything. I also think that there's nurture / environmental aspects that can also play a part into that, play a part into everything. So, for example, if you were born gay, but you have parents that are hyper religious or abusive and don't want to hear anything about that gay talk or that gay shit now, as many parents do, a lot of parents will invest in conversion therapy where they want their children to then be straight, or they will overly discipline their children, be hypercritical of their children, to be more abusive towards their children that identify as gay. So you have children that will actually hide that, for safety and survival. And I've done several posts about that as well, as my podcast on that, where I talked about how I where I worked with children who grew up being severely abused and neglected, and were in the group home / foster care system that I worked with, and how they would be living a completely different lifestyle when they were in foster care. But anytime they made any sort of contact with their abusive parents, due to family reunification, they would code switch up. They would change their identity, change how they dressed to become more heteronormative, heterosexual presenting for those abusive parents. So that's one. I did a post earlier today about how people that struggle with hypersexuality and other sexual trauma, they've been sexually traumatized. So there's a lot of people that sexually abuse or children and teenagers and people, and so, sexual trauma can certainly play a part into that. I've spent many years interviewing and working with people who have extensive sexual abuse and sexual trauma history. Men are more difficult to work with than women because men don't like to talk about they're harder to talk to about their sexual trauma as much. Versus women, they're more likely to reach out and get services. I'm not saying 100%, but by and large, women are more likely to come forward and do the work and start talking about it more so than men are, in my experience. And with men, they tend to repress their experiences, carry it with them to the grave, but they try to cope with it they cope with it in a way in which is not so healthy. So a lot of them will have anger or rage, substance abuse issues, may become abusers and things like that, where they literally try to fight or become hypersensitive towards things that urges and things like that they may be struggling with. And that's due to how do I want to put it? It's due to their challenges in sort of reconciling with the abuse, and then just all of the cultural beliefs and stereotypes and biases they may have around anything that does not fit with what or who they think they're supposed to be. So there's that. With women, what I have found with women and men are a little bit different in some ways. One of the things that I found that is true with women can be heterosexual her whole life and then be in a bad relationship with a man, and where she's traumatized. She is just like emotionally, she's never able to recover from a level of trauma that she's had with a man, or she's been with a husband that has been super emotionally unavailable, and so on and so forth. And so women can change up, and women can often change up, their sexual orientation with little to no judgment, or things like that. Not always, but a lot of times they can. But I think a great example that demonstrates what I'm talking about here, the type of phenomenon I'm talking about here, is Chantel from 90 Day Fiancé. And she's a classic example of what I've seen many women do who have just gone through the ringer with a marriage or in a relationship, and now they need that emotional support, companionship that a woman can bring. There's also, I think, worth mentioning is the sex work industry, where, again, women who work in sex work a lot, and maybe porn stars and things like that, or prostitutes, ladies of the night, they may be having sex all day with men, but then they come home to women. I think Eileen Wuornos and her girlfriend were a good example of this, where, again, it goes back to all of my trauma has been with men, but I utilize my trauma in order to make a profit, but it's actually not where I want to be. But I will do sex work and things like that in order to make a living, to get my needs met as far as supporting my addiction and whatnot. Then there are some people that may have grown up, been exposed to things a certain way, and then they experienced something that was outside of their sexual norm, and they liked it, and they're going to go with it, or they're going to keep trying to experiment. So now I'm a little bit more fluid now than I was before, or I'm a little bit more open to things that others would consider to be alternative, but that's just where I'm at with it right now. I'm exploring myself. I'm exploring what the world has to offer, so I'm not going to put a label on things. Now we have another genre of people that have been around for a long time. We have people now that are chameleons. Sexual chameleons. I will be whoever and whatever I need to be in order to get my needs met. And I feel like this is a little bit different from sex work, because these people that are sexual chameleons are a lot more deceptive about who they are and what they're about. They just essentially mirror the person that they're with. And this is a type of psychopathy. And so, in order to get my needs met, in order to skip, scam, wham, I'm going to be whoever I need to be, have sex with whoever I need to have sex with. And I don't really attach a label. I can go for years and no one ever know who I truly am. Even if I'm married and I've got kids or whoever, no one really knows who I really am. I don't really identify. I don't really care either way. People are here to serve me. So I can do a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and I don't really owe anybody an explanation. I also don't need to label myself because I don't care. Another nature thing that I forgot to mention is having more boys within the family. So with men who have 3 brothers, there is a higher percentage, almost 50%, so it's like 40, 41, 43%. Men who have 3 older brothers within the family, they have a higher likelihood of being gay. So this is another example about how nature also plays a part with the probability. It's called the fraternal birth order effect. And so I hope that answers your questions. We're just about out of time, but definitely make sure you subscribe to my podcast, A Date with Darkness. I also have a corporate consulting podcast and my newsletter. Everything is linked in my bio. See you next time. Take care.